Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Letting Go of Her podcast. So, last week, on the day that I released my newest episode, I realized that it has actually been a whole year since I started this podcast. And like it kind of showed me how much or how lack of a priority this podcast is. And not that it's like not a priority, not that I don't put thought into it, not that I don't enjoy doing it. But when I had my previous podcast, I was so like focused on it and like had kind of like very strict schedules, and I had like a whole calendar planned out of what I was going to do and what I was going to talk about. And like when it hit my first year anniversary, like I made such a huge deal out of it, right? Like I had people write video reviews and I made a whole video and posted on Instagram and whatnot. And maybe part of the reason why like I didn't remember was because I'm not on Instagram, right? I am taking a break for the whole year. So maybe it was like, well, like who am I going to celebrate with, right? Like who's going to know or whatever. Um but yeah, but it just made me realize like the difference between how I kind of do this podcast and how I did my previous podcast. My previous podcast, I was like extremely invested into it. And I'm going to say invested into it in like a very unhealthy way. I dedicated I dedicated a lot of time to it. But it was fun, it was fun. I got to enjoy a lot of things, talking to a lot of people, meeting a lot of people from like different parts of the country, really. I got to meet some pretty neat people. And I created a good little community. Some people that I met through my podcast, I still talk to today. So it was a lot of fun. But when the Lord told me to stop identifying myself as someone with anxiety, which was the premise of this new podcast, right? Like I didn't want to stop podcasting. Podcasting is a way that I express myself. It's a way that the Holy Spirit allows me to be vulnerable. Because if you know me in person, I will talk, right? Yeah, if you ask me a question, I will respond. I'm not truly someone who will go out of my way to make a conversation, which is something that I am learning or trying to be better at. But I don't necessarily like open up about things. People have always told me that I'm a very private person. And it's not that I am private, it's just that I don't want to burden you with all of my burdens, right? So it tends to take me a lot to open up and to feel comfortable with opening up. Um, so yeah, so on this podcast though, or since I've been podcasting for whatever reason, I am able to speak my truth, speak my sins, speak my convictions, right? And it's just something that I truly enjoy doing. I love sitting wherever it is that I'm sitting at the time with a little microphone to my fingers, and talking. It's what I enjoy doing. And I feel that it is a great way for me to be able to, I don't want to use the word minister to people, but it's a great way for me to share my testimony to different people and from different countries even. I was just looking at my stats the other day and I was like, oh man, there's a lot of you in Canada. There's a lot of you in so many different countries. And I was like, wow, so hello from the United States. Hello from California, actually, is where I am. But the Lord did tell me to stop identifying myself as someone with anxiety, and that was literally what my entire other podcast was about. Right, it was just like my life with anxiety, and I felt that like at some point I was just like stuck because I was just only focusing on my anxiety, and I wasn't necessarily focusing on all the other good things in my life. Right, all the actual good things in my life. And I was just keeping myself there. So after praying and praying about it, the Lord, showed me like you are a new creation, right? Like, why do you keep saying those things? Why do you keep thinking about those things? And yes, I know I do talk about my anxiety on this podcast, but that is because I want to show you that it's not necessarily just a flip, right? Just because you finally put your full trust in the Lord, just because you finally surrender, it doesn't mean that on that day you fully put your trust in the Lord and you are fully surrendered, it is a process. Sanctification is a process. And even though some days I feel that like I haven't made any progress, even though some days it feels like I am still there, I am still struggling. Um, it's been really great to see over this last year, because during the summer when I took a break from podcasting, I listened to all of my previous recorded episodes because I wanted to make sure that when I came back I wasn't talking about the same things, right? Like I wasn't repeating the episodes. So I listened to all of them, and what I quickly realized was the huge growth that I've done in just this year. And I feel that like a lot of times, because we are extremely hard on ourselves, we don't necessarily notice it, right? And we think to ourselves, like in a year, like what could possibly change? What could possibly happen in a year? But a lot can. And so I am grateful that, the Lord guided me into starting a new podcast. But I'm also grateful that I was able to record what I was feeling, what I was dealing with, what the Lord was showing me a year ago, and like where I am now. And it's just it's so amazing to see, um a little bit of his plan. I don't know where this is going to end. I don't know, um how this is going to end. But it's good to see like, oh wow, like the Lord truly does have a purpose for everything. um and it's just been so crazy to see all of that. Well, I guess I should say here, right? I did attempt to do YouTube videos for this podcast. You can still listen to the actual podcast, like the audio only on YouTube. But you can't. I attempted to do actual videos of me, physically being there, but it just didn't work out. I didn't really have the time to do it. Because a lot of these episodes I record when I do have time. And like right now, I just showered, so I washed my whole face completely of makeup because I was at the gym and, sweaty and gross and whatever. And so now I'm recording it with like a towel in my head because my hair is wet, no makeup on. And I'm like, I'm not going to video myself looking like this, right? No one would watch. So I had to stop doing the videos. So maybe one day, I don't know. But I'm enjoying this. It's very minimal work, I should say. But I still feel like I am making an impact in my own life. But hopefully making an impact on someone else's. So when I did go back to listen to um, the very first episodes that I recorded, and then when I just like go back to think about how or who I was just a year ago, right? Like March 1st of 2024, like where was I? And I remember that I was still in like deep despair of anxiety. Um, it was slowly getting better, but I still had moments where it was just very, very, very debilitating. And I remember between my husband and I, there was just lots of like little things of little fights that we would pick at, because of my anxiety, mainly because he didn't quite understand um why or how it had gotten so bad, and like neither did I. And so for me it was like I wanted him to be more compassionate, I guess, and for him it was more like just get over it sort of a deal, and not like in that kind of rude way, but to him it was just like, you've been able to overcome your anxiety before, why can't you overcome it now? But this was just so much more intense. um and I couldn't figure out why, and I was just like really really stuck there, mentally but also just like physically. And I remember around my birthday, because my birthday, well, I guess when this releases, my birthday will be on Monday. um just feeling sad, because I thought that I was making progress in like making friendships and making connections, but we weren't there yet, right? Like I wasn't in a place where people knew my birthday or like remembered my birthday per se. Um, so like I remember being sad on my birthday. And also I don't think I've like, do people truly just like blatantly say like, "Oh, my birthday is this day, right?" And you just like, "No, like I don't think so, right? I don't think I know half." No, okay. Well, now I know people's birthdays, but like I didn't know back, like it's not really like a conversation starter or something that you throw into conversation. Um so yeah, but that's also like a me thing, right? Like that is a I throw myself like pity parties, which is something that I'm still trying to work on. Because I like love to celebrate people. Like I truly love to make big grand gestures for like anyone as much as I financially can. um I enjoy doing all of that. It brings me joy to see other people be joyful, right? So it's a me thing. Um it's a pity party on myself, which that which is something that I need to work on. But just listening to these like previous podcast episodes, I could see and I could hear the anxious like thoughts coming through, um still the doubts, and still just like not knowing where all of this was going to lead or where all of this was going to end. And I could still hear like how hurt I was over certain things. I could still hear like the unforgiveness that was in my own heart. But I could slowly see the process, right? um and I want to say possibly around like summertime was when I had like the mind shift of like I need to stop thinking about myself, because anxiety, really what it is a very prideful sin, because we want things to be about us and we want the pity parties for us. um, Also we want to be in control of things, right? So it's a very prideful sin, and I realize that like maybe one of the ways that I'll be able to combat it is if I stop thinking about myself so much. And if I start to just serve others. So I think since like the summer, I had been praying, like, Lord, like, where can I serve in my church? And I'm not going to lie, I did say, help me serve anywhere, but in the children's ministry. Not because I don't love the children's ministry or because I don't appreciate the people that do work in the children's ministry. For me, it was just like I am with my kids 24/7. Um, and I don't think that I can give my all to other kids and be around them, not 24/7, but be around them. And I'm just like, I don't think this is my season of life to serve in the children's ministry. Like I would want to at one point, but right now that's just not where my heart is leading me. But I know that the heart can be deceiving. So, Lord, if that is where you want me to serve, then okay, I'll accept it. But I was like, anything else, right? So I kept praying and kept praying about it. And kind of like around September-ish, which is when all of our like ministries start to come up again. So like the mom's ministry, the women's ministry, men's ministry, all of that stuff start up again in September because everything takes a break over the summer. I took a leap and I spoke to someone and was like, "Hey, you know what? I feel that the Lord is leading me to serve here, right?" Um, and this person was just like, I think you should pray about it and make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the Lord wants you to do. So I was like, okay. I honestly, I felt rejected. I felt hurt at that point because over the summer while I was praying, I kept seeing this specific ministry like over and over and over again. And then I felt like I asked too late. I felt like I tried to figure it out too late. I felt that the Lord had kind of put it in my heart earlier in the summer, but I waited until like the end of the summer, and I felt that I just kind of missed the opportunity, right? And as months went on and more things were going on, I kept praying and praying, and I kept thinking of all these things like maybe I should do this, or maybe I should suggest this, or maybe this, or maybe that. Um, and as like time went on, these things that I had been thinking about actually ended up happening. And again, I felt like defeated. I was like, man, like if only I would have spoken up, if only I would have just listened the first time, right? Then like I could have potentially been a part of this, or I could have potentially done that. Um, and it was just hurtful, and it was extremely discouraging because I know for me, one of the things that I struggle with a lot is just speaking, right? Is just opening up. And it's like giving ideas, right? And all these ideas that I had slowly started to become an actual thing. And I felt like, wow, like this is another missed opportunity that I have had. But then the opportunity arose for me to share my testimony, and I did. I shared my testimony in October, October 23rd specifically. And I remember that date specifically because exactly a year before that was when I had gone to the doctor, because I was having extremely, extremely debilitating anxiety and panic attacks that I just could not control. And basically my doctor just said, like, it sounds like postpartum anxiety, maybe you should be put on medication because therapy obviously didn't work. And talk about feeling defeated, right? And I remember like on that day just declaring like, no, like I know that the Lord is going to turn this around and use this for my testimony, right? And how amazing is God that exactly a year later was when I shared my testimony of what I had been dealing with for the last year. So that was really amazing. I was able to share that to the women's group at church. And then I was able to share that to the moms group at church. And it was just, a huge blessing each time. Such a strong support of women who came by my side, who knew how hard this was for me. But honestly, that just kind of sparked a little bit more fire in me. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like, if I was able to do this, like, I think that I'll be able to do more. Right. And so I continued and continued praying, even just like deep, deep prayer over, like, Lord, like, I know that I can do this with your strength. Right. Because I've seen your strength give me, or yeah, I've seen you give me the strength to go up there and share my testimony. So I know that I would gain your strength again, right? And I've been praying and praying and praying and praying. And that is why I made this whole year, and the word of my year, right, is like studious. Like I want to learn more so that I feel, I guess, prepared whenever the Lord calls me to do something. Um, but also I want to learn more because I know that there are so many things that I just miss from just reading the Bible to get it off my checklist for the day, right? So I have been kind of in deep, deep study this year. Some days not as much as others, but I have been enjoying, um, how I'm reading the book and all the studies that I've been doing. And I've honestly been learning a lot. Now, when people say things, I'm like, "Oh, I get that." Or like, "Oh, I remember reading that," like, "Oh, yeah, I totally know what you're saying." Or like, "Oh my goodness, I can make connections like back and forth." And that is such an incredible feeling. Like my husband's like, "You just nerd out." And I'm like, "I do nerd out." I'm like, because I'm like, "Oh, like I get it now," right? And before that, I was like, I have no idea where you got that from, right? Like I have no idea where that story comes from. So it has been great just to be able to learn more and I guess feeling a little bit more confident in like, okay, I'm finally starting to get it. Like it's finally starting to click. But besides that, the opportunity arose for both my husband and I to serve at church in one of the ministries. Um, and I did have my reservations at first, right? I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm knowledgeable enough. I don't know if I'm cool enough. um, like I don't know, right? And I did have those reservations, and I do know that the enemy was in my head, right? Um, and I just kept thinking, I kept praying about it. And I'm just like, no, like, I don't want this to be another missed opportunity. And I don't want that. Right. And then when my husband was asked, my husband very quickly was like, yeah, and And that was kind of that. Not that I did not have a choice to say no, but one of the things that I was also praying for was for me to be able to serve with my husband. And because of my husband's still very hectic schedule with school and work and everything, I was like, I don't think this year is the year. But little did I know that my husband, during his own prayer time, was praying for a place to serve at the church as well. So we were praying for the same thing at separate times. We weren't praying this prayer together. So it's very, I'm very grateful that the Lord heard us both in our prayers and found us a spot to be able to serve together. So it's just like crazy to see how a year ago I was extremely anxious, which I still am. I'm not gonna lie. I still have my moments, right? But where I, to the point where like I wasn't seeing a purpose to my suffering and I wasn't seeing an end to my suffering. Um, where I still hadn't just accepted that maybe this is just the way the Lord wants me to suffer here on earth, right? And like, who am I to question what He wants for my life? Um, and to see where I am now, like still anxious, but trusting the Lord more into like, okay, maybe I am dealing with this for a purpose, for a reason, right? To be able to speak to someone about this and be like, I get that. I understand that, right? Like Jesus came into this world and he went through everything. He went through all the things that we went through, right? Just so that he can be like, I get it. I've been through that, right? So maybe this is just my I get it. I've been through that to be able to make myself relatable to other people. And in the ministry that we are in now, like I feel that that time in someone's life can be very anxiety inducing. Um, and so I feel that like, okay, maybe this is kind of the reason for it all. I don't know. Maybe it is lack of faith. I don't know. But I'm trusting the Lord that He knows what He's doing. He knows what He's doing in my life, and He knows where He puts me, right? So, yeah, I'm just going to ask for like prayers for my husband and I as we are, going into this ministry. We've only been in it for 2 weeks now. Um, and so far, I've realized that I know a lot more than I thought I did. Um, when I started speaking, my face did turn red. I could feel it. I could feel it turning red and hot. So, you know what? I feel that through time, it won't be so bad. That was my first time. And considering that all I had was a flushed red face, I'll take it. Because I remember when I shared my testimony, my heart felt like it was going to explode out of my mouth. And that was not a fun feeling. So, I will take red flushed faced over heart popping out of my chest any day. The Lord truly gave me strength during this time, and then the Holy Spirit truly consumed me and helped me remember things and make connections over things. And I was proud of myself. But I pray that the Lord was proud of me too, right? That I am in a place where I am uncomfortable, but with God, I am making myself comfortable. This year has been a huge year of learning to trust God more, and learning that through whatever circumstance, whether it feels horrible and horrendous, He will use it for His glory. So don't ever forget that, because there are some terrible things that we can go through in this world, but He wastes nothing. Um, So if you are, in a bad spot and you just keep thinking like, I don't see an end to this, I don't see a purpose for this, I don't see how this is ever going to get better, take heart, because He is working and He is doing something. And we might not see it in a year or two, maybe we'll see it in 10, 15, 20 years, but the Lord wastes absolutely nothing, and He will do everything for His glory. Today, I am learning to let go of the person I was a year ago, someone who still was mistrusting, someone who still was hurt, someone who still held a lot of unforgiveness in her heart. Today, I'm learning to let go of my need to know why everything happens, and my need to understand why everything happens, and to just trust that God knows what He's doing, because I am a new creation.